Thank you for joining us. I'm Phil Little, the host of the Private Investigator Experience podcast, and I have with me my co-host Wade Little, and we're here to talk to you about the life of a private eye, some of the cases that we worked on. But I must say that perhaps like many of you, I'm a little subdued and a little heavy with what's going on in Israel and those attacks there that were beyond. I've been in some rough places and seen some rough things and watching what ISIS had done, but I tell you, this is overwhelming. And because my career started in terrorism and counterintelligence there in northern Israel and southern Lebanon, I have great ties there, and it's heart-wrenching to say the least. So for us to be talking about something as frivolous as a private detective and what we're doing seems a little bit out of place, but life does go on. Keep praying for the people there. And we're going to leap into this. And Wade, how are you doing and what's going on up there your way?
Well, I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. Going my way, everything is great. Just continuing to plug along here. And like you, just really devastated by what took place and what's going on. And not only what happened in Israel, but the response by some people and some groups, not only in the United States, but throughout the world.
Yes.
And it really is just, it's just disgusting and it's evil. So I know you just did a recent podcast on some of that in Israel, talking about that. And I know you're going to be doing more podcasts specifically on the situation in Israel and what's going on. And I just encourage everybody out there, like my father said, not only be praying, but there's also ways that you can help and support in other ways too. So please do that. Well, should we talk about this current show and what's going on?
Yeah, let's dig into this murder case that went on for several years and was kind of fascinating.
That's right. And see, our episodes are going to take several years as well, right, to go through it?
Pardon?
I said our episodes that we're doing are going to take several years to go through, right? Day by day?
Well, yeah, we could. Yeah, if it went that long. I don't think we'd probably run out of interesting things to say. So maybe we should shorten it. Let's do that.
Well, we're going to shorten it up. There's maybe one or two more at the most. But I do know that I've talked to some people and they're really intrigued by this. And when I was talking to them, they're like, no, don't spoil it for me. Don't spoil it for me. So that's really cool to hear. So, all right. So when we last left off of our episode here, we were talking about the girlfriend of our subject, the one who was murdered. His body was found in the hillside in Ventura County. And as the investigation went on, you and your wife at that time, my mom, were going out doing some field work, some investigative field work on your own to gather information at a known spot where the investigation led to some names and some information. So that was ongoing, as well as what the police were doing, and then other entities who also became involved, which you'll talk about. So what information the girlfriend told you, I should say, was that the subject, the victim, was looking for investors for the ranch because there were some financial issues. So the detectives started running those names, doing some record checks, backgrounds. And as we talked about before, it's not like it is today. It was much more time consuming and more difficult to do background investigations, even for law enforcement. So what we came up with was the name of the insurance policy beneficiary, which was, and all the names in our story have been changed to protect both the guilty and the innocent, I guess. We'll call him what? Jack Dickey?
Yes.
Okay. So we've come across that. We've got this name, Jack Dickey. So at this point, can you start elaborating on what you were doing at this point?
Yes, this was just the initial and part of the investigation. We didn't know at this time that we were getting into an international crime ring that was going to involve other countries and out around the United States. And we said at the time, as we got into this and talking amongst ourselves, that we'd turn over a rock and another crook would crawl out from under it. So as Ventura County was focusing on just gathering all the background data they could, I had gathered a lot of information from the insurance company, everything they had on the policy. And now we knew that who he was, where he was from. So my next step as law enforcement was working here. I headed up to Washington State, up in the Yakima area, and set up appointments with the family. And once I got there, I didn't really know what I was going to get into, but I found this was a very normal family, ranching vineyard owners. They were pillars of the community. Our victim in this murder had been a church going, God fearing family man who was looked at with respect in the community. And no one knew anything about really what he was doing down in LA, even his family. He didn't talk a lot. They knew he was trying to raise some money, but no one there knew anything about it. As I interviewed several of the family members and friends, I cross-interviewed. I was looking for some mistakes. I was looking to see if maybe any evidence of anyone was not telling me the truth by things they said or mannerisms. And during that whole process, I never picked up anything that any family member was involved in this. In fact, they were extremely surprised at the insurance policy that he even had that. And
Okay.
so,
So here, let me interrupt that if I can, because I got some questions. And you mentioned that the subject was a church-going, God-fearing man, but yet he had a girlfriend on the side. So anytime I hear that, then I always kind of cringe because, again, you never know what somebody is thinking and what they're doing on the side. So that, I think of other people who committed crimes and people say kind of the same thing. But so when you're talking to the family, at this point, are you saying, look, he has a girlfriend on the side? Or how did you approach that part of his life?
no, not at that point. During that first meetings with them, I was trying to get all the information I could. I was there as the insurance investigator, just checking out this policy, which turned out they knew nothing about, checking on, and they weren't the beneficiaries of it.
Right.
And it was more of I was cautious. Also, I was careful because of they had lost this husband and father, and there was a lot of emotion. So I didn't dig into what we knew at that point because it was very sketchy, and it wasn't the place for that. So I knew at another time I would be back, and that would have to be taken up.
Right. Yeah. And especially at the beginning, you don't want to get somebody in such an off-put position that they're not going to talk to you at this point. Right.
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 Yes.
Okay. All right. So at this point, so you've had this initial meeting with the family. I'm probably just astounded that there's one assurance policy that their husband, father, or whatever this person has been murdered. So at this point, you've had that meeting. What are you doing now?
Now I'm headed back to Los Angeles. I'm writing up all the reports, getting the information to the insurance company that needed to go to them and to the law enforcement team, McCoy and McKinley, up in Ventura County. And as they begin to run the backgrounds on people and the names that the girlfriend had given us, some of the names of the money people that he had been meeting with or had made contacts with him, and they came across the name of Jack Dickey in some cross-checking that they were doing. And as we started digging into this, we realized we stumbled on through, in fact, I'd made a contact with some other insurance people. I was doing work with other companies. And we stumbled on that this Jack Dickey had been a beneficiary in other insurance policies. And so we realized that maybe there was something more to this. We didn't know anything about those cases at that time. So we started pulling together the jurisdictions that had those cases, some in Texas, some in Oklahoma, New Mexico. There was a couple others in California, and we started trying to dig up everything we could on those cases so we could see if there was any similarities to our particular case.
Okay. So we've got multiple states. And at this point, besides yourself and West Coast, is there, and Ventura County Sheriffs, are there any other entities involved in this investigation?
No, not at this point. And that's one thing. And I think this was one of the reasons that they picked Ventura County to dump the body in instead of LA County, was because it's a smaller department, smaller county. They don't have the resources. And McCoy McKinley just told me, said, we don't have the resources to follow this out. Looks like where it's going, because it was going to be very involved. So that's when I went to the insurance company, told them what the story was and how critical this was. And of course, they had a couple $1 million at stake. So they said, well, we'll fund that investigation. So I was able to put together funding so that McCoy McKinley could keep going. And the next step was, once we had the cases where the jurisdictions were in, we started contacting the locals. And we found out that we had unsolved murders very similar to ours, with Jack Dickey's name all over the beneficiaries. And then we knew that we needed to bring people together. So at that point, we decided to set up a task force.
Right. So these other local jurisdictions you're talking about, this was what, Texas, Oklahoma, LAPD, because you talked about other parts of California. So we had those three jurisdictions in each of those states. Was there anybody else that you brought in at this point, especially I'm thinking of federal agencies? They get involved at this point.
Well, yes, that's what we did. Once we started talking to these other states and realized that they had some of the same set of suspects and people of interest in it, we also had contacted IRS intelligence, because they would be involved in any money laundering or money obtained illegally. And then the FBI, we contacted them because we had these multiple state jurisdictions and murders across state line. And some of these people, we began to learn, had traveled. Of course, the suspects were traveling across state lines, but in some cases, they also had the victims traveling across state lines. So we decided we need to find out what everybody knew. So we set up a conference, a 2-day joint investigation conference up in Ventura County, right on the ocean there. And all of the detectives came in from all these jurisdictions, bringing the information they had, so that we could set up some kind of a working arrangement.
Right. So what? So you rented a room somewhere in a hotel, right? It was like
The big conference room. They had down on the, let's see, the detectives these guys were fun, these two detectives, but they'd put down on the banner podium downstairs at the hotel. It was we had a big conference room, and it was the initials for Get Dickey something something. I don't know. I can't remember now the initials. But yeah, it was a big conference room. We had, there was 15 or 20 of us that were there at that first meeting, and started laying out what we had. Each person would brief on what they had and basically the facts they had. And then we started making some plans.
Right. So, I mean, did you open the meeting? Like, you say, hey, everybody, thank you for coming. This is really important. Coffee and donuts are in the back. Or how did this meeting start off?
Yeah, we had all that stuff, the coffee, donuts, bagels, continental breakfast. I introduced myself and what we were in it, and that the insurance company was funding this, and we were working with Ventura. Then Ventura came on and started laying out their case. Then once we spent, it was 3 or 4 hours talking about the different cases, in those days, of course, there wasn't computers. So we decided that we need some kind of a tracking. So we had a big rolled up paper that was like the 3-foot wallboard, and we stretched that out across the room. And it's about 30 feet long. And we went to the left side, and we put on there all of the suspects, persons of interest, names that we had from all the different cases. And then the idea was, at that point, any information we had that would connect those two. So you could go across the top, which had the time and date, and you could come down here to October 15th at 3 p.m., and you could see if any of these people were meeting together. And that's how we begin to connect the dots and putting people together, so that we could say, okay, these people know each other. There's something, going on here.
Right. So basically, it was the precursor to a whiteboard. You had a suspect list, and then you had a timeline, and you were able to just walk that 30 feet and see who was there, what happened at different times, and determine any, like you said, cross connections or meetings that took place.
Yes.
All right. So what else besides that? And you said that took 2 days. So what else were you or other detectives doing, your other detectives doing as part of the investigation while that conference was going on.
Well, there was an assignment made to each group or each people, each detectives that were there. And we had a certain things that we were going to do related to the insurance company and information were getting from them and could get from others. Then the Ventura County detectives were the lead on it. And then each one of the other groups took things to do, like check out these people, check out this situation. Part of the thing was we were trying to build a timeline of we knew when he had gotten to LAX because the girlfriend knew when he went to meet this unknown suspect. After that, we were blank. It was because he wasn't found till 3 weeks later in Ventura County. So we had this time. How did the shooter get into Los Angeles? We assumed that he was coming by plane since that he had wanted to meet at LAX. And that was before the time of all the restrictions that we have now after 9/11 and all the things. And so that was the big thing was, can we identify when he was actually killed? Did they drive him up there and then shoot him? He had 30,000 cash on him. So that was the first step that we tried to put together and begin to unravel this and pull the string out of the big roll.
Right. So was there any idea of what this Jack Dickey looked like? Any description of him or anything?
Well, we got a physical, and they were able to pull photos of him from law enforcement. And he was kind of a dark-skinned guy, kind of Italian-looking guy, even though he wasn't, I don't think, Italian as I remember. But we knew, but nothing was on him by any agency. He did not have any criminal. He was, to all appearances, clean background. And so we knew that he definitely wasn't the shooter. He wasn't the guy that was running around putting all these criminal acts, actually doing them. So that means there had to be many other people involved. And we suspected at that point we were onto either an organized crime, and this was this was an organized crime. It wasn't mafia really that was involved, but it was a sophisticated group of guys and had learned how they could make a lot of money by spending some time and effort with a suspect that needed money and then setting them up. And usually these insurance policies, some of them were only enforced 2 or 3 months and before they killed the person, which was really suspicious, it would seem like, but a lot of them had been collected on, even though that now I don't think you would be able to anywhere near get a payout on a death policy, particularly a murder, in that period of time.
Right. So while all that's going on, you continued your active participation in the investigation. Were you still going to that restaurant? What was going on there?
Well, we kept going there, but at one point there, I realized that something wasn't right, that the way we started getting treated, there was in my mind, they had a suspicion. And I wasn't aware at that point. Later, I found out that they had ran my license plate and gotten the fact that I was a private investigator. But I sensed something was wrong before I knew that. So we started backing off from that a little bit, mainly because I had my wife involved and we were going there. And now with all these murders, obviously these guys weren't against murdering people that might know something too much. And because they were trying to pick my brain, they were trying to talk to me questions that just raised the red flag. So we backed off from that. And it was then that we had Texas stuff coming in. We had the locals there and in Oklahoma. And we uncovered a case up in Oklahoma that was the largest murder for hire case at that time, the Mullendorf case. It was a $10 million policy. And so that popped up. And we wanted to find out more about that. So I made a trip to Texas and Oklahoma to see what we might be able to find out there.
Interesting. So, I mean, I've got to be honest here. I have no idea where we're at time-wise on this episode, but it sounds like that might be a good segue for our next show.
Yes, you know what, Wade, you're right. I think we've given some next time. There's going to be a good-looking blonde that gets involved in this picture. There's going to be a few twists and turns, and the intrigue unravels. And we thought we had the gun. Ultimately, we had gotten the gun that we thought had killed him through a series of things. We'll go into that a little more. But we thought that we had a victim who we were going to be able to exhume and find the bullet and in his head, and that would solve our problems. But we'll leave that for next time.
Don't say anymore.
Yes.
All right.
I won't.
All right. So obviously this is a crazy case. And this is one of those cases that when you read about it, or when you see it and hear about it on a podcast or watching a video cast or whatever, you're thinking, wow, this is crazy. And it's intriguing, and it's just so much going on here. And so I think by our next episode on this, we'll tie all the loose ends up, probably, right?
Well, it might take 2 more, but we'll probably close.
So we're close to everything. And so it'd be interesting, though, if anybody out there, remember, we have an email address, and that is pi777@gmail.com. And if anybody out there would like to send us an email and tell us what they think might happen or is going to happen, or just some ideas on this murder investigation, please send us those emails, and we will be happy to look at them, and we'll even talk about them in our next show. So go ahead and send those in. And always, again, we read every email, and we look forward to receiving those. So we thank you for those. Also, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, hit like, tell your friends and family about the show as well and what's going on, and have everybody join in. So that, based upon that and everything we just talked about, is there anything you want to close with?
Yes, hit that subscribe button, and then the notification bell, so you'll be notified. That's the next time. And until then, hey, folks, we're living in a very messed up world. Be praying that peace comes. And to may God bless you, keep you and your family safe, and may God bless America. See you next time.